This is the story of a bloodless, devastating execution carried out entirely behind the velvet ropes of Buckingham Palace. What Queen Camilla just realised behind closed doors is that her entire royal empire is built on a staggering illusion. In less than a year, a meticulously constructed 30-year PR campaign to elevate her from royal mistress to untouchable sovereign has been completely dismantled. And it was not destroyed by a screaming match, a leaked tabloid story, or a dramatic confrontation. It was destroyed by the quiet, ruthless weaponization of an administrative protocol. By the time Camilla realized what was happening, her access was being revoked, her future was being quietly erased. And she was left standing in a palace she does not own, facing the chilling reality of her own commercial desperation. In this video, we are going to unpack the secret power grab Camilla. Attempted in the wake of Queen Elizabeth II's death, we will examine exactly how Princess Anne and Prince William uncovered her paper trail, the silent institutional retaliation they executed to trap her, and the devastating realization Camilla now faces. She has the crown, but she actually owns nothing. To understand the sheer magnitude of Camilla's current humiliation, you have to understand the illusion of absolute power she had wrapped herself in. For 3 decades, she played the longest, most disciplined game in royal history. She endured the public hatred. She watched from the shadows as Princess Diana became a global saint, and she waited. Slowly, with the help of a highly paid, brilliant public relations machine, she laundered her image. She went from the most despised woman in Britain to a smiling grandmotherly figure who just wanted to support Charles. She convinced the public and perhaps even herself that she had no grand ambitions. But the moment the crown was placed on Charles's head, the mask quietly slipped. Camilla began moving her non-royal children into the spotlight. She began rewriting the hierarchy. She believed she had Charles completely controlled, and by extension, she believed she had the entire institution at her feet. She felt totally untouchable. The trigger for her downfall was an act of staggering exploitation that crossed a line Princess Anne could never forgive. It started with a single word. When Queen Elizabeth was still alive, she issued a deeply considered statement during her Platinum Jubilee in 2022. She explicitly stated her wish that Camilla be known as Queen Consort when Charles became king. That word consort was not a suggestion, it was Elizabeth's ironclad boundary. It meant Camilla would hold a supportive honorary title. It meant she would stand beside Charles, but never above or equal to the 1,000-year legacy of the crown. That dying instruction lasted about as long as it took for Elizabeth to be buried. During the frantic coronation planning, Camilla engineered a subtle but devastating institutional erasure. The word consort was quietly scrubbed from the official invitations, from the royal website, and finally from her own title. She was crowned simply as queen. She overrode the dead monarch's final wish silently, efficiently, and while the entire nation was still in mourning. She did it assuming no one would have the nerve to stop her. She underestimated Princess Anne. The first time Princess Anne left, Camilla completely exposed, happened at the coronation dinner, a room packed with the highest-ranking royals and global dignitaries. The atmosphere was supposed to be historic and warm, the culmination of Camilla's 30-year climb. All evening, Anne had watched Camilla glide through the room as if she had single-handedly rewritten British history. Anne had even overheard Camilla correcting a guest who referred to her as Queen Consort, telling them sharply that she was simply the Queen. That was the moment the Iron Princess decided to strike. Anne looked directly at Camilla across the room, not past her, not around her, but dead into her eyes. In a voice that cut cleanly through the polite chatter, carrying the weight of the institution itself, Anne said it out loud for everyone to hear. "You are not Queen. You are the Queen's consort." The room instantly went cold. Camilla's eyes dropped straight to the floor. Her mouth opened to defend herself, but her lips only trembled. No sound came out. She forced a tight, panicked smile that never reached her eyes, turned and quickly retreated. This was not a slip of the tongue. Princess Anne is the most protocol-precise human being on Earth. She has executed over 20,000 official engagements. She does not make administrative mistakes. What she did was drop a forensic psychological bomb perfectly aimed at Camilla's deepest insecurity. And Anne had every right to do it because she was carrying a weapon she had held on to for nearly 20 years. Back in 2005, when the ink was barely dry on Charles and Camilla's wedding certificate, Princess Anne went privately to Queen Elizabeth with a very specific request. She refused to ever curtsy to the woman who had destroyed her brother's first marriage and caused so much pain. Elizabeth, wielding the ultimate power of the monarchy, agreed. She had her private secretary draft a formal, legally binding protocol document stating that Princess Anne would never be required to bow to Camilla. Elizabeth put it in writing defining exactly what she thought Camilla's moral ceiling was. Anne had carried that document like a concealed blade for 2 decades. When Camilla tried to erase the word consort, Anne was not surprised. She was ready, but the dinner confrontation was just the warning shot. The real war was about to be fought over the very foundation of Elizabeth's legacy, the charitable empire. After the coronation, Camilla began a quiet, aggressive campaign to absorb the charities that the British public still emotionally connected to Queen Elizabeth. Organisations like Barnardo's and the Royal Voluntary Service, places where Elizabeth had been patron for over half a century. Camilla was not moving toward these institutions with grief or reverence. She was moving with appetite. She saw an empty throne and sought to occupy it. She believed that if she could plaster her name over enough of Elizabeth's patronages, the public would eventually forget the late Queen and associate that legacy with her. It was a hostile takeover disguised as royal duty. When Princess Anne discovered the paper trail of this rebranding effort, her retaliation was swift, silent, and totally devastating. Anne did not complain to Charles. She did not leak stories to the press. She simply used the system to completely dismantle Camilla's plan. Before Camilla's office could even file the paperwork to take over those key organisations, Anne stepped in and absorbed over 300 of them herself. She personally took over the Friends of the Elderly, a role Elizabeth had held for 60 years, ensuring there was not a single day of vacancy for Camilla to exploit. Then Anne executed a masterclass in visual humiliation. For her 75th birthday, Anne hosted a massive forum at Buckingham Palace gathering nearly 200 representatives from over 100 charities. They gathered under Anne's name, they celebrated under Anne's authority. It was framed to the public as a birthday celebration. But to those inside the palace, the message was unmistakable. Anne was standing firmly in the centre of everything her mother had built, locking every single door before Camilla could even reach the handle. Every charity Anne touched was a foothold denied to Camilla. Every room Anne filled was a space Camilla could never claim. Camilla tried to play the victim, attempting to use her PR training to corner Anne in public. During a highly publicised event at the University of London, Camilla gestured for Anne to walk into a room ahead of her. It was a performance of graciousness designed to make Camilla look like the bigger person, the benevolent Queen allowing the stubborn sister-in-law to take the lead. But in royal protocol, the Queen always walks first. It is not a polite suggestion, it is the law. Camilla outranked Anne, and she knew it. She was weaponizing fake kindness. Anne saw straight through the hypocrisy. She stopped dead in her tracks. She looked at Camilla, refused to move, and completely rejected the gesture. The standoff lasted only seconds, but it was agonizingly clear to everyone watching. Anne was not going to let Camilla demand a queen's absolute authority, behind closed doors, while playing a humble saint for the cameras. At the Commonwealth Day service, weeks later, Anne escalated the freeze-out, while every other senior royal greeted Camilla with the mandatory kiss and curtsy. Anne simply walked up, kissed her on the cheek, and walked away. No bow. No deference. In a building constructed entirely on protocol, Anne's refusal echoed like a slamming door. She was reminding Camilla that the 2005 document was still very much in effect. But the ultimate trap was not just about charities and curtsies. It was about the terrifying reality of commercial desperation. While Anne was blocking Camilla's access to the moral authority of the Crown Prince, William was quietly examining the ledgers. By the spring of 2026, William had taken full operational control of the Duchy of Cornwall, the billion-dollar real estate portfolio that funds the royal family's private lives. William initiated a massive silent financial restructuring. He began selling off millions in estate properties and auditing the payrolls. And suddenly Camilla realized the fatal flaw in her 30-year grand plan. She had spent 3 decades manipulating her way into a palace, only to discover that she does not own the bricks. She does not own the land, she does not control the sovereign grant, and she does not control the duchy. Everything she enjoys, the cars, the security, the private chefs, the country homes is funded by estates that now belong entirely to Prince William. The man whose mother's memories she spent decades trying to erase is now her landlord and her paymaster. As the reality of this financial and administrative lockout dawned on her, Camilla retreated to her private quarters. She picked up the phone to call King Charles, desperate for him to intervene, to order William to back down to force Anne to show respect. She demanded that the king exert his absolute authority to protect his queen, but what she heard on the other end of the line was the one thing she never planned for: silence. The silence on the other end of the telephone was not a technical glitch. It was the sound of a king hitting the absolute limits of his own authority. For 30 years, Charles had fought the world to give Camilla everything she wanted. He had defied public opinion, battled his own mother, and rewritten the rules of his reign to place a crown on her head. But in this exact moment, when his wife was being systematically cornered by his sister and financially outflanked by his son, Charles did nothing. He did nothing because he could not. Charles has always possessed a very specific fear of Princess Anne. The kind of fear a compromised man has for someone who is completely morally right. During the darkest days of the Diana years, when Charles's reputation was in ruins and the monarchy was destabilizing, Anne held the family line. She covered for him. She worked the unglamorous engagements. He owes her debts he can never repay. Furthermore, he knows that William now holds the purse strings. To order his son to release financial control or to demand that Anne surrender her ironclad protocol, privileges would trigger an institutional civil war. Charles does not have the leverage to win, so he listened to Camilla's demands and he chose silence. And in that silence, Camilla understood exactly what it meant. She had married the king, but she had not married the power. This is the devastating contrast of schadenfreude that palace insiders are currently witnessing. From the outside, Camilla's billionaire PR machine still projects the image of a triumphant queen. But the broke reality is that she is entirely dependent on a system that is actively preparing for her exit. This is the essence of her commercial desperation. Camilla does not come from a family with vast, ancient estates that can rival the crown. She does not possess a private billion-dollar fortune. Everything that gives her life the texture of royalty, from the palaces she sleeps in to the helicopters she flies in, belongs to an estate controlled by Prince William. What looked like a routine administrative update when William took over, the Duchy of Cornwall, was actually a total dismantling of her empire. William is a forensic operator by auditing the payrolls and selling off properties. He is reminding Camilla of a very cold, hard fact. When King Charles eventually passes, her title largely vanishes. She becomes a dowager. That is a word that simply means she was once married to someone important. There is no platform in that title. There is no sovereign grant attached to it. There's no guaranteed continuation of her power. She will be left sitting in a house she may not even be welcome to stay in. Forced to use the side doors, her access to the main palace entirely dependent on William's goodwill. The woman who spent decades trying to erase Princess Diana's legacy now realizes that Diana's son holds the deed to her daily existence. But Princess Anne and Prince William were not just executing a masterclass in revenge. They were not just tearing Camilla down. They were clearing the path to build someone else up. The entire strategy of blocking Camilla from Queen Elizabeth's charities was designed to preserve that charitable empire for the one person who actually earned it, Catherine, the Princess of Wales. While Camilla was being quietly boxed out, Anne was acting as a structural firewall for Catherine. This alliance was never formally announced. There was no public declaration. Instead, it moved the way the most powerful things inside the palace always move, through silent, deliberate action. Anne absorbed those 300 charities and kept them funded, visible, and safely connected to the crown, waiting for the day Catherine was ready to inherit them. Anne recognized something in Catherine that Camilla could never understand. Catherine had paid a price for her position that most people in that family had never been asked to pay. She had faced a devastating cancer diagnosis that shook the entire country. She had disappeared from public view, enduring grueling treatment, putting her body back together away from the cameras. And when she returned, she did not demand a promotion. She did not rewrite protocol. She returned with the quiet, uncomplaining focus of someone who understands the true weight of public service. Catherine built a business task force for early childhood development. She championed children's hospices. She committed to hard, deeply human work that mirrored Elizabeth's own sacrifices. That detail matters. It matters because it exposes the difference between occupying a role and actually fulfilling it. Camilla wanted the title and the applause. Catherine did the work. And the institution is now publicly enforcing this new order. You could see it clearly when the BBC found itself facing the wrath of the palace machinery. For years, the media had casually referred to her as Kate, as though her royal status was merely optional. But recently, a wave of intense pushback forced the BBC to issue a public apology and correct themselves on air, mandating the use of her proper title, Catherine, Princess of Wales. That correction had the fingerprints of Anne and William all over it. It was a clear signal to the world and to Camilla. The casual disrespect is over. Catherine is the future queen, and she carries a line of legacy that runs straight back to Elizabeth, completely bypassing Camilla. We are now witnessing the final phase of this institutional reckoning. Small, subtle shifts are happening every day. A portrait of Queen Elizabeth is quietly brought out of storage and placed in a prominent hallway, while the commissioned painting of Camilla is moved to a less visible room. Access codes are changed. Protocol rules regarding who walks where and who bows to whom are suddenly being enforced with unforgiving precision. Not because the royals are petty, but because they are protecting the very foundation of the monarchy. A title without moral authority is just a word. Camilla manipulated the system to get the word, but the moral authority of Elizabeth's legacy was never hers to claim. It was earned over 70 years by a monarch whose shoes Camilla could not even begin to fill. Today the crown sits on Camilla's head, but the legacy has already moved on. Princess Anne made absolutely certain of that, and Catherine is already carrying it forward, one quiet engagement at a time, securing the future of the crown while Camilla is left clutching an empty title. If you found this deep dive into the shifting power dynamics of the British royal family insightful, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We will continue to track this story as the true legacy of the crown unfolds.